Okay, so we're here live on Full Hands In and Full Hands Out on behalf of Tales of the Cocktail to talk a little bit about what's going on with COVID-19 and some recovery plans and some coping skills and just kind of what's going on. So my name is Laura Cullen, for those of you who don't know me. I'm the founding member of a company called Liberty Consulting. And I'm here with 5 people who I love very, very much, who are also very esteemed members of the hospitality community. And I think the best way to start this off is just to have each person do a brief introduction. So Alba, I'm going to start with you because you are by far the best looking person on this call and the smartest. So can you just let us know what city you're from and where you guys are at in terms of your lockdown and what you're doing? Are you doing to go? Are you doing anything? Are you in business at all right now? And what's your prognosis for the immediate future?
Yeah, so I'm Alba from Houston, Texas, and I have a bar here that has a 51% alcohol beverage sales license. The reason it's important to note that is because right now there's a huge differentiation between what is a restaurant and what is a bar, and how we are allowed to handle any kind of business during COVID. Since I am in Texas, and if you are following the national media, there is a phase opening in Texas, of reopening in Texas, since we were shut down March 17th, which was a Tuesday.
It was St. Patrick's Day.
It was St. Patrick's Day, and I do think it might have had something to do with the fear of large groups joining, getting together that day. So, anyway, long story. And the process now is there's rumors that maybe it's the 18th that we are allowed to reopen at a 25% capacity, but that doesn't really mean a whole lot to most operators or business owners because, one, we want to stay safe and we want to be well during the process. Like none of us want to be endangered or put our staff in danger or even our community in danger of having some kind of spike in COVID cases, and also at the same time the detriment of the fact that we didn't really build our businesses based on a 25% capacity to begin with. So It creates a much more cost-effective problem of how to operate and how to reopen. Particularly, there's a PPP loan, which I think a lot of us have applied for, and I was explaining it to a friend of mine who doesn't live in the States, and I'm like, it's kind of like we all kind of want this broken toy,
Right.
Like it's going to be helpful to anyone who can utilize it during the time that you can utilize it. There's some amendment changes rumored here and there. And, but ultimately it's not, this isn't when we talk about recovery, we're not talking about the recovery of one individual restaurant or bar, but we're talking about the recovery of an economy and how we're all affected by that more directly than just, I have to go fix the cost percentages on my drinks and then I can have a higher profit, economics of it is that every individual bar has kind of their own hurdles and the things that they have to overcome. But even so, we're talking about the macroeconomics of it, which is looking at the economy as a whole and what kind of economy we're going to be opening into. And I think the two conversations do overlap, but as we're, so to tell you my story, we are not doing anything during this time. We have there's some very strict situations, very strict rules as to how to go about that. We have a mostly beverage license, and the way I've explained it before is that in Texas, the more alcohol you sell, the less resources you have to be able to continue doing business. And that's basically, if you have a bar or if you have a cocktail bar that does, even if we do like 30% food, not enough food sales. But then there's also this kind of like, if you can sell food with your drinks situation, but again, that might be something that's really instrumental for some people. That was just not very instrumental for us. So to move forward. to, just like kind of follow the rules and also abide by the things that are good for you. I just didn't want to put I have a skilled staff, and I think most of us do if you have a cocktail bar. So when you think about your skilled staff, you think about them in different ways than, as the larger conversation about restaurants right now is, well, you don't have to rehire your staff and you can rehire new people. But the real variables there are that, well, you've invested so much time into training your staff for such a long time. You have tenure with them that like they're skilled workers. They've gained skills over the years, and they've gained skills with their own time to just think of how to easily replace them. And I think that's a very interesting conversation to have with other operators as we talk about what like the skilled labor that is that exists in cocktail bars.
Yeah, so and also the chemistry too, because it's not really a plug and play, right? You can have a very talented bartender that for whatever reason just doesn't work with a certain team as well as they do with another. So there's a whole, and of course, mitigating that is really your platform for success, because as you're bringing guests in, the chemistry of your team is one of the things that keeps them coming back. So it's really a very delicate balance, I'm sure.
Yeah. I also think, just by watching, some restaurants have reopened at this 25% capacity, but they don't look like they're at 25% capacity, to be really honest.
They look like they're more?
Absolutely. Like, I don't know, like there's really no regulation on the 25% capacity that's happening externally out of of how somebody wants to reopen their business.
Right.
Right. There's not like a governing agency that's keeping track of this. There's a lot of, there's a lot of systems of like telling on people. A lot of it is just public shaming. So it creates this whole other problem of like, if, like, can you control, like, how do you control a bar crowd? And the reasons why people go into bars, and not that it's impossible. All I'm saying is that at the point in time that we're in, so this, we're approaching in the next week or so, in the next 10 days, we're approaching this 25% capacity rule. That might still change. There's all kinds of changes happening every day, and staying on top of it is really, like, staying together with information is really important. Keeping on stay on track of what's happening in your particular city and how that applies to your particular business with your particular license and your particular people. So it's so it's always in the top of your mind, but also the organization of it is, like, I think the best thing that we can share is information. So even though opening restaurants and whatnot, you might have your opinion about that, I certainly do. What I've seen from it is gathering of information of how people are actually doing it. And I think that's very valuable. Whether something works or not, that's also very valuable. And even though bars were in Texas, in Houston and in Texas, we were kind of the last people, like the last part of the last sector of the bar and restaurant economy that they thought about. They were like, oh yeah, and bars closed too. We're also the last that they think about as they're reopening, so we're able to see how, what things are working, what things are not, how to maybe have a different model, how to train people, train your staff back whenever you're going into these new, you're going into a new economy, and it's changed in some ways. So there's a really important process of learning there that I think that I'm very grateful for. And again, it's just kind of so many different variables happening at the same time.
Yeah, I think on this call, and hopefully people will ask some questions. I think mitigating how you enforce social distancing in your bars and restaurants is going to be really important. So, Jay, I want to jump over to you and get your perspective kind of on what's going on in New York City.
Yeah. Well, first, LC, thanks for putting this together and inviting all of us. I appreciate it.
Actually, thank you to Tales of the Cocktail, because they really...
That's true. Thanks, Tales of the Cocktail. So yeah, my name is Jay. I have a bar or two bars in New York, one in Brooklyn called Basik, one in Queens called Second Son. It's definitely been a pretty unique experience going through this in New York City. Specifically, there's a lot of, I think, unique sensitivities because of the sheer amount of people and the sheer speed with which the coronavirus spread here. Currently, both of my bars are closed or totally shuttered. We're not doing any to-go food or to-go drinks. And I think my biggest worries, although there does seem to be a light at the end of the tunnel around here, my worry is not necessarily about reopening, but what it's going to look like and how phased it's going to be. To Alba's point, opening at 25% is a near impossibility for people like us. And then also hitting, if there's 25% capacity, we also have to consider that includes our employees. So if we're allowed to have 70 people in our room, you have to subtract the amount of people that are serving everybody, and then everyone still needs to be a certain distance apart. It becomes very, very difficult. All of us, our business models are dependent upon a packed room, a full room, and as many people as we can serve as possible safely. And so to try and replicate what we do at 25% it's going to be learning a new skill for all of us. I don't know about New York, how we are in a timeline, if that's going to be, sooner than other places in the world, a lot later than other places in the world. It's really super unclear still.
Yeah. I want to jump over to Jan in Scotland and just kind of get a European perspective of what's going on, because here in the United States, as you know, we have very competent and clear leadership. So it's been a really not stressful for us at all. So I just wonder what it's been like for you.
Yeah, it's been quite stressful, and the kind of, it's like Alba was saying as well, we're the last ones to be thought about and the last ones to open. But yeah, so I'm based in Edinburgh. My name's Iain McPherson. Recently got a bowl cut is a new thing I've been doing. I've got bars called Panda Sons, a bar called Houton the Redeemer, and the third bar called Nauticus. And we very smartly bought a bar in December, which is not open. And so that created a massive financial hole for us at the moment. But yeah, they're hoping to open the bar's up again by beginning of July, but I think realistically here it's going to be August. And so what I've been working on is, my money's tight. So, I've had to become a web developer. I taught myself that in 2 weeks. And so I built this platform here called the Edinburgh Booze Delivery, where we've got more bars coming on board. We've got our whole delivery software system set up in there. And it's different here because we don't have the three-tier system like you guys. So we've also got local brewers and local distilleries on the website. So we're really trying to create a community again, which is really important. But obviously, just revenue, but also we're all on the same platform. Basically, it's a larger audience for everyone. So that's what we're trying to do right now. And, we had a lot of press from that, and we just completed our second weekend. And this week, we're extending our deliveries to Thursdays as well. So yeah, it's tricky, and for us, a lot of people are asking me about it being a short-term solution. It is, but it's also part of the long-term solution for us as well. Because, obviously Corona's on the forefront of everyone's minds, but the financial thing in the background is grim, real grim. So once our doors opened, we'll be having a similar. I think they're saying between 40 and 50% capacity for us when we open, but not even that. I've talked to some friends that are actually enjoying quarantine. So actually, a lot of people are realizing that, especially a lot of introverted people, I don't have to go out socializing. A lot of people have adapted and embraced this new life, and so we need to make sure we're able to cater for that demographic moving forward as well. And I really think people need to plan for that, and that's why I'm trying to help all the bars, especially in the Edinburgh community, just like, we need to plan ahead. Doors opening is just the end of the first battle. Then we've got this year to 2 year battle with the phases, the Corona legislations, and also just people getting financially stable again. So it's going to be a long recovery for us, and I'm sure for you guys over there as well.
And I think it's an interesting point that you bring up, because we have no way to predict what behavioral changes are going to take place. But there is a lot of speculation as to whether or not people are going to want to go out less if they're used to cooking at home. And I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I know for me, the minute you can let me get to a bar or restaurant safely, I'm there. But I also have an eating and drinking problem. So that's just me, you know. Plus, you know, I'm a social butterfly, so I've got to fly out there. But it's kind of, it's fascinating, and I think it's really cool what you're saying, and I love the fact that, you know, I know you built this platform, but the fact that it's inclusive and that you've got your whole community involved in it is really, I think, going to be the key for all of us moving forward, is to continue to share information, as Alba said earlier, and to really work together and to figure this out. You know, I sent out on the invitation, like, I don't think we have the answers to anything, but if we're all working together, I think we can come up with some pretty good solutions. So with that, Think, I'm going to bounce over to you and just, you know, and you can speak, if you can speak both to Nashville and Miami, that'd be great.
I'm owner of the Sweet Liberty in Miami Beach neighborhood bar. Serve food, cocktails, and fun. I'm going to let David touch more on the Miami, and I'll talk about Nashville, because I just got off the phone with my partner up there. And Nashville, like Miami, is slowly starting to reopen. Today is the first day where I think they're opening restaurants at 25% capacity, bars not included. And I think Alba spoke about the difference between bars and restaurants. And I think that they're just dividing it on what bars really serve food and have extensive menus. Bars that don't serve food are not really going to be open at this point. But it begs the question, it's the same thing. It's 25% capacity all over the place. And everyone's asking the same question. Why would you open under 25% capacity? Now, I don't know if, I don't think that staff applies for a lot of states. In Florida, it does. And certain states do. So if you're talking about a small room like Sweet Liberty, where we fit, 150 people and 25 are staff, then what do we have left over? That's really the tough one there. We've been talking about this a lot, and what everyone seems to be thinking is what I'm thinking is, why be the first one to run the gamut? You don't want to be the first person to run the obstacle course. You want to be the fourth. You want to see how it goes. And that's kind of the wait and see mentality I think that we're having down here. So Nashville's pretty much on the same par as Miami is, maybe a week behind. Yeah, a week ahead, I should say, because Miami's next week, May 18th.
And May 18th. And I think the other interesting thing is too, I mean, this is such a litigious society over here in the US. The liability to reopen is also a great unknown. And it does seem like there's going to have to be some discussion as to what happens if somebody comes to one of your bars and they contact trace a viral transmission to your bar. I mean, I think it's hard to do, but it's, something that, I think we have to talk about.
Yeah. I mean,
Laura, to add to that real quick, so that was one of the questions with the Texas Restaurant Association as these restaurants are reopening, and the fear of being sued, at least by the state, and their suggestions is that if we have a protocol and if we follow all the practices of, the 6-foot rule seems to be the one that's the most easily enforced, where it might not be something of capacity and counting how many people are actually in your business at once. But if you follow the strict protocols the best as possible, yes, that's something that makes you look like you're a responsible, that proves that you're a responsible person, but it might not be the thing that saves you from a lawsuit.
Right.
Because that's just very different, like being sued is one thing, and that's still going to cost you money.
Right.
And then being right or wrong is another thing.
Yeah, and listen, I mean, there's also, we could talk all day about ethics and morality, right? Like what is your, what is your responsibility to your customer, to your staff, to yourself in terms of putting people's lives at risk, or is that something that, you know, um, it's a conversation that you have to have. David, I want to bounce over to you, and I know that there are a lot of really great community activations locally, right? So I know in Miami we have this great group of people that are talking to each other. I think it's about 350 operators. And I know, David, you've been really active in talking to local government and trying to solicit national um, government, for some type of stabilization or relief. So I was wondering if you could talk to us a little bit about that and a little bit about what you guys are getting ready to do at Cafe La Trova as well.
Of course. Good afternoon, everyone. David, me own a little place called Cafe La Trova with my partner Julio Cabrera, which most of you probably know. And as you mentioned, Laura, we have been in different discussion groups. They call them tasks, mini task force. As far as the mayor of Miami put a group together of people in the restaurant bar industry to try to give him some, he basically said, I don't know anything about the restaurant business, but can you guys give me some guidance as far as some recommendations? What can be done and what can't be done? What can you operate with? What can you operate without? So he put these groups together, and in the groups there were doctors and there were health department people as well. So in other words, the restaurants could suggest things, and then the doctors, of course, would say, well, that's, not possible, and we can't let you do that. And then the doctors had opinions like installing hand washing sinks at the entrance of every restaurant before we reopen, and we had to let them know that that was a very good idea, but not very possible in a short amount of time. And with that being said, it was all about kind of a happy medium, and everybody's biggest concern, of course, was how do I keep my staff safe and how do I keep my customers safe if this is something we're going to do. Financially viable aside, I think that's everyone's biggest concern, right? Perfect example is, of course, we can put tables 6 feet apart from each other, some easier than others depending on the size of your establishment, and we can try to abide by all these rules, right? But a perfect example is kitchens. We've all been in kitchens in this industry. Keeping 6 feet apart or even 3 feet apart in a kitchen is nearly impossible, right? I mean, it's not going to happen. Sometimes people are 12 inches away from each other, or on a pass, you pick something up, and the same behind bars. Some bars are a lot tighter than others, and so at what point does it become a luxury? As what can we do and what can't we do? Obviously, right? And we went at it for about a week, and a lot of suggestions, and it looked, after describing everyone's experience from the moment you arrive until the moment you leave, it was a complete different world than we knew 3 months ago or 2 months ago when we went into this, obviously, right? And it's an awakening. Yeah. It's going to be, and we can do all these things to reopen and all these rules and regulations and spend money on all this PPA, and nobody comes, right? Just because you reopen your places doesn't mean that people are going to be trustworthy to want to go out, right? So I think that becomes, where all of us, we're focused so much on hospitality, and that's our life, that's in our blood, that's, making people feel welcome and giving them these experiences. I think an equal amount of energy has to be focused on safety, right? Because if people don't feel safe coming to your establishment, they're not going to come back, and they're probably going to tell 10 people not to go there either, or whatever the case is. And I hate to say it, but a lot of it is perception on it as well. I mean, there's the things we have to do. I'll give you a perfect example. We were talking about gloves. All 3 doctors in our group said gloves are worthless. They're an extension of your hand, and sometimes they're almost worse, right? But they give people a perception that you're being cleaner, right? So that's a perfect example of, we're taking people's temperature. As beautiful as, as great as that would be, it's not really, a lot of people don't show symptoms really. So that's more of a perception thing. And there's just so many going back and forth about it. And the reality of the matter is, Everybody, wants to try to find the best solution how to come out of this, and everybody knows it's not going to be a switch of a light switch. It's going to be little by little, and unfortunately, our models, a lot of us won't be able to survive little by little. I don't know about you guys, but
Yeah.
my landlord's not making me pay 25% rent. You know what I mean? There's a lot of things
Yeah.
that go into it that, unfortunately, it's we're gonna I think need a lot more assistance from a federal level if this industry is gonna survive.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, at 25%, I think Dan mentioned it earlier, it's you're almost better off not opening, right? It's probably less expensive to try to carry the costs as long as you can till you can open at some larger capacity. And then again, to your point, just because you open your doors doesn't mean that people come, or doesn't mean that their behaviors are the same. Yeah, Ben.
And it doesn't even mean that if you open at 25% that you'll do 25% of the numbers that you were doing before. That's no guarantee.
Right.
You could do, if you do 25% of the numbers, then that's kind of amazing, but you probably won't. So
Yeah.
that's a tough one too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the
so,
other part is,
Jan, I'm curious as.
I just wanted to say, we were talking about lawsuits before and viruses and the virus. And if you get traced back to your place, I was thinking that, for most lawsuits, or almost all lawsuits that you have in restaurants and bars and whatnot, you have insurance that will, provide, lawyers for you and handle the lawsuit. I was wondering, if you get sued for having somebody come to your virus, are you going to have insurance for that? Which I don't think you will.
Right. No, I mean, and that's, again, it's just one more thing to negotiate and one more thing to consider. Right. I mean, obviously an insurance company isn't going to be like, oh, I got you, don't worry.
Right.
I mean, it's obviously going to have to be something, because we've been talking about this in terms of business interruption. Right. Obviously your business is interrupted, but it's not covered. And I think these are the reasons why the place where we need to raise our voices the loudest really are to government officials, because all of these regulations are things, there's got to be some protections in place, not just from a pure business perspective, but again, we're talking from an ethics and a moral and a health perspective, and we're all going to need help to manage that, right? It's kind of the only way going forward.
They're not covering because they're saying there's no property damage, but I mean, we're not open, so there is damage. So it's tricky.
Right. Yep. Jan, I wanted to bounce back to you for a second. Are you doing delivery of cocktails? Are you doing bottles? What does the model look like?
The model's about us adapting a model that hopefully other cities can adopt as well. So I guess with you guys, we can't have the breweries and the stuff, but yeah, we sell bottled cocktails from each bar. We've got obviously the beers from each brewery, spirits, but also like Scottish soft drinks. And then we're increasing our package. We're going to start doing like RTDs next week, and also start doing more bigger packages just to make it a bit more versatility. And then we're going to have cooperative classics, like the Edinburgh Cocktail Shop. So any bar that's participating can also put, like a more of a bigger seller cocktail on there. That's not going to directly reflect their bar, like a pina colada with a small twist, or a martini or a Cosmo, and have that to help them drive sales as well. But especially with our fourth bar and how we're looking at our 3 bars that are ready to reopen, I guess, is we're looking at a fallback situation. I guess when you're talking about the kitchen there as well, David, is just we're looking at creating the bars as dark kitchens. So I don't know if that term is used in the US. It's basically a kitchen that's primarily never open to public coming in, but for sales through Deliveroo, Just Eat, and all these kind of food delivery apps. And that's what we're looking at now, is to get ready for that as a fallback. If the cut on capacity is so bad for the moment, we're looking at just getting a temporary kitchens fitted in and just start at least finding some revenue by selling, we're not trying to do the top cuisine, but make really good pizzas, for example, something that we can adapt two real quick and just look at revenue, because the thing I'm really freaking out about is obviously the bars being open this time next year, but also just the staff. We've been quite lucky here in Scotland and the UK that the government have given people that aren't working, I think it's 80% of their pay, which is really, really good. But that's not going to last forever. So that's what I'm trying to plan for now. And I think, we're going to, one of our shops are going to be basically like just a dark kitchen, or even to an extent, a bottle shop or liquor store / dark kitchen, just trying to find different ways of helping keep people safe, but also trying to make sure we're getting some jobs for our staff and also revenue for our bars.
Yeah. So I know, David, at La Trova, it was a strikeout, but has anybody gotten any significant relief from their landlord?
Not to my knowledge. Obviously, at La Trova is a unique situation because we have a very special landlord. Let's just leave it like that. But in a lot of cases, and I asked this question to the mayor, right? Is there anything in place for the mom and pop places, the places that have 10 tables, or the family works there, or they don't have larger staffs? And I think we're part of the segment, but there's obviously a much larger part of the segment, and then there's a smaller part of the segment as well. And I mean, how long can we last? How long can we go on with delivery only, or completely closed, or all of us obviously have a different amount of time that we can we say we can last 3 months, 4 months, but I think I think the landlords are not, first of all, they don't understand our industry. Very few people do. There's cents on the dollar on a good day. So I think it would require politicians to intervene in order to for something like that to happen. So and so that's where we are with that. It's challenging. It's difficult, and I don't think I think every case is different. But I think, like I was talking with Dan the other day, are we going to lose more money opening, or are we going to lose more money staying closed? Which is the best of two evils, right? Because we're going to lose money no matter what, right? And Dan, you can chime in on this one if you want, but
Sweet Liberties, Sweet Liberties, with the full kitchen, the margins, of course, a lot thinner than, let's say, Mama Tried. And you were talking about getting help from landlords. Our landlord from Sweet Liberties starting the conversation now, and we started the conversation with them, and it looks like that he's gonna, if we stay closed, throughout the rest of the year, I think he's willing to go half rent. So every landlord's different. Blackbird, they're not having it.
Yeah.
David's landlord's not having it, but
they don't care.
Some landlords are willing to work with you, and don't want to see their buildings go empty. But I don't know how everybody else is faring with that.
I mean, I would ask. I mean, I'll ask you, Jay. I'll put you on the spot here, and feel free to answer as candidly as you wish, or not at all if you don't want to. But what resources are you guys using in terms of your accountants? Do you have a financial advisor? Have you put pen to paper to see kind of what some of these different scenarios look like? Because everything is so uncertain. It's got to be really difficult to be making these decisions when you have so little factual evidence to go on.
Yeah. I mean, for us, the only person we were able to and made the decision to keep on paying out of our pockets was our bookkeeper, who does all of our accounting. And that was mostly to keep on top of PPP loan applications and on top of payroll now that we had a PPP loan and things like that. How does it look going forward? It's hard to tell. One of the things that I've been really keeping my eye on in New York specifically, and I can't speak to the other markets, are how the state liquor authority in New York how they revert back to normalcy once we can start opening bars, and if we can continue to sell to-go cocktails and bottles of liquor out of our bars, which we can do now. But if they completely stop doing that the day they can open to 25% capacity, it's going to be difficult. If they don't, they bend with us and kind of go along the flow with us. I can see, a normal in 6 months of us being open 50% and people going to dinner parties at their friends' houses and bringing, basic cocktails with them, or cocktails from Julep or Sweet Liberty, what have you. Maybe that's something that that can help us along the way. That's maybe a little bit of an easier fix for the government. The fix of like not doing something, just letting it kind of play out for a little bit. But other than that, I don't really know. That's kind of the only thing I can foresee as being a pivot for us as far as our business model to help in the coming months.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think that we keep talking about it. I mean, I know that the independent restaurant group is raising a lot of awareness and a lot of money to directly lobby national government and the House of Representatives. And I think, to your point, some of these liquor laws, which are really antiquated anyway. I mean, I said earlier that Alba was the smartest person on the call. That's just because you have to be super smart to navigate how the hell to do business in Texas. So like, there's that. But I do think that the model is going to have to change. And to your point, some of these regulations and laws are going to have to bend with us in order for it to make sense, because there's got to be financial viability, and really there doesn't seem to be any end in sight. I think all of you are saying you're probably looking at a minimum of 6, 7, maybe 8 months until you could possibly get back to the numbers that you were doing in February. I mean, does that sound accurate for you guys?
I think.
Sorry.
Hope so.
I mean, I don't know about you. I don't think anybody's thinking of 2020 of that taking place in 2020, right? Maybe if we're fortunate, we can.
Yeah.
If they come up with a vaccine and something happens, maybe we can capitalize on the holidays, right? But to be honest with you, I think it would be, not fair to anybody to really think of, how do we break even, by the end of the year? How do we try to do our best to possibly break even? Because even that's going to be difficult. At least that's our thinking over here, right? I mean, it's going to be, because we haven't even talked about if there's a second wave, or let's just say we go through this exercise and then we have to close again in September. I mean, let's hopefully not have that conversation, but you have to think about it, right? Because it's a possibility. And so even if that doesn't happen, I think it's we're just going to have to get creative and hopefully work together. That's one good thing I think that's come out of this, and I think we've been able to work together with a lot of our peers, with a lot of our competitors. Everybody's working together because we're all dealing with the same thing. Yes, we have different state governments and different local governments, and and Scotland, Iain, the situation might be a little bit different than, but I feel for Jay in New York, because I look at I watch the news, and you talk to every New York, and I feel for everybody, because it's difficult, and it's 11 million jobs is what it is. It's the second biggest industry in this country behind the national defense. And so when you think of that, unfortunately, unlike the airline industry or the banking industry, we're not 10 big airlines. We're 500,000 bars and restaurants across the country. And so I think we've had very little representation in government. And I think that's if anything good's gonna come out of this, hopefully that'll change. None of us can afford lobbyists, but when you put all of us together, our voices together, hopefully it will mean something. Because I think it's important. It's a part of our culture. When people travel to, the Texas, when they go to Houston, they're not looking to go to Hooters or Ruby Tuesday, or they're looking to go to Alba's places. That's just tourism. When they go to Nashville, they're not going to these national chains. They're looking to go to dance places, and that's part of the beauty of tourism, which is such a huge part of our economy to begin with. 11 million jobs.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I have to just make a comment here. The one thing that I have found really phenomenal in all of this is that I have yet to speak to a bar or restaurant owner that's saying, fuck it, I'm not going to make it. I give up and I'm going to go drive a bus. I think this community, I just have to say it, I get overwhelmed sometimes with the tenacity and the ability to pivot, and the fact that we're all on this call now and there are calls like this taking place all over the world every single day, and everybody is just fighting, because I think, it's business, and yes, it's the economy, but there's just something so special about bars and restaurants, and all the more reason why we're going to have to figure this out, because it's just such a part of our DNA and contributes so much, not just economically, but, and not just, just, it's where people meet, it's where people get together, it's where they gather, it's where, great ideas are made, it's, people celebrate, people mourn, people, it's so important. So I just wanted to put that out there, because I get overwhelmed sometimes. I have yet to hear anybody just be like, fuck it, it's not going to work. It's like, we're going to figure it out. We're going to do this together. We're going to lobby Congress. We're going to make this work. And I just want to say, for all those of you that are doing this work every day and looking at your numbers every day and talking to your staffs every day, you're my heroes. You really, really are.
To that point, Laura, if I could just quickly chime in, some of the people who are signing in to watch this, some are business owners, some are bar owners, some are just interested in hearing what we have to say. Owning a business is an uphill battle all the time. Now, even more so. And I will say, one of my personal shortcomings is I always, I never give myself enough credit. I always feel a little like a step behind, or maybe I am not keeping up pace with my peers. And for the first time since, the places have been open, we're all kind of on the same page. And in all walks of life, people have reached out and we've kind of talked on a level playing field about everything, which we probably always were. But now I really feel it. And it's really encouraging to get advice and have people to talk to that are kind of doing the same thing,
Yeah, I think so. I'm just reading in the chat, Lynette, thank you. She's sharing some resources for lease negotiations, but I'd love to encourage everybody on the call. I know on the Tales of the Cocktail website, there is a link for resources to help with COVID-related business issues. I know Tobin Ellis has put together a great website as well that's really helpful. I know many of you are on local chats and have organized your own. I know, Iain, you have one in Edinburgh, and I know there's one in Miami, and I'm sure in New York. The independent restaurant platform is really incredible, and in the chat now is the link to the Tales information. But I would really encourage everybody that's on this call, for any resources that they have, to please, you can send them to me directly if you want, or send them to the Tales team, so that we can continue to update those resources and continue to share them with each other, because I suspect that new challenges are coming up all of the time. And as we overcome one set of challenges, there are sure to be another set of challenges that are going to reveal themselves as we solve these problems. So I definitely think that the collective mind is going to be the way forward. I think that's really the only way. And I think we can change this industry and make a lot of the things that we've all been talking about fixing a lot better. I think this is an opportunity. I hate to say it's an opportunity to reset, but in some respects, I think we're all really finding out what the important things are, what the things about our bars and restaurants are that we love, what we need to change, and what we need to never let go of. So that's sort of my 2 cents on that subject. We do not have any questions. I know that there's a lot of people commenting in the chat, but if anybody has a specific question that they'd like to ask anyone on the panel, if you could go ahead and put that in the question tab, because we're going to get ready to wrap this up here pretty quick, and I just don't want to leave anybody out of the conversation. All right. Well, do any of you guys have any final parting words that you'd like to share?
I mean, I think that, you know, and again, I think we have a very great hub of information and a very tight group of constantly sharing information, which is the competitive advantage that we have over other industries, is that we have already built that network. And the use of it and having these, you know, having these live streams and having resources and having a platform to go and borrow, you know, maybe information about a grant system and et cetera. And I do think that innovation is what's going to get us to a safer place. Like, it's very difficult to promise anything at this moment. You know, even when I'm talking to my landlord about lease negotiations, et cetera, it's like, well, you know, we're talking about what I can do in like 6 months. And I'm like, you know, I don't want to promise you anything, but I'm going to be really honest with you about what's going on now. So being innovative is really important, not just for us, but even the lawmakers, of how we are confined to work within our space. And then the other thing is to, you know, acknowledge that it's different, and also acknowledge that it's temporary.
Yeah.
You know, and and we have to embrace that. And it's just really, it's not the easiest thing to do, but embracing the things that are coming out of this, I'm seeing people do some really incredible things. I'm seeing my friends get involved in conversations with lawmakers. Like, let's continue that. Let's borrow the things that we've learned from this and keep them. And no, we're not going to get out of public eye, you know, or out of like lawmakers' eyes. Once this recovers, like, we should continue our fight there. Like, we should continue talking about why it's important for restaurant workers to have better healthcare systems. Like, we are in danger. We are always the busiest people. And we have to make time for these things. But I do believe innovation is the way how we get there. The way we get there, we get to a better place.
And I also think I grew up, my father was an owner operator for about 45 years of a bunch of bars and restaurants in New York. But one of the things that he taught me about being a part of a community was that you were truly part of the community. And what that meant was you paid attention to what the laws were, you engaged in local politicians, and you made sure that you were constantly advocating, not just for your business, excuse me, but also for your employees and for a way of life, and making your neighborhood safer, making it cleaner, all of these different things. And I think that that's, a lot of people do that anyway, but I think what we're seeing through this is that people are really starting to say, wait a minute, what's this law? What's that thing? Where did this regulation come from? And I think it's important for us to get involved and to ask those questions and to stay involved and to really be a part of that process. So I'm just going to, there's a bunch of questions and we're really running out of time, but I'm going to just ask if we can stay on for 5 more minutes. One of the things that Ryan Clark has asked is, aside from pivoting to to-go drinks, have any owners found other outlets to shift their business models? So I think for me, the most that I've heard is to-go drinks and sale of rare collections of spirits. But is there anything else out there that you guys have heard about?
I think merchandise. I mean, if there's for Sweet Liberty, I know that it's about getting creative, right? I mean, merchandise, I think, beyond food is really the only other thing that we've been able to do. Some places have done well on gift certificates, or selling experiences. I know, some places have been doing okay. Well, let's have an auction for, I'll come to your house and host a party for 12 people when this is all over, and I'll come and create the cocktails and do a menu for you, and it goes to the highest bidder, right? And what it does, it gives you access to capital now, which is when you need it. Those kind of things. But beyond that, I can't think of anything else.
I've seen people do like consulting over, like doing, I don't know if the right word is consulting, but having like doing home bar consulting through Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
and where somebody's just paying you for your time, which I think would be really good for anyone who is currently, furloughed or laid off. I think that's a really good source of maybe tapping into, if you're a bartender or a server or anybody in the industry, like tapping into your regulars and like sharing your knowledge in that way, and I thought that was pretty creative.
Yeah. This is another great question. What would you advise for bartenders, servers, and other staff who are concerned about returning to work and risking their health versus losing their only source of income, i.e. unemployment? Because that's a big thing right now too. I think a lot of us have staff on unemployment that are actually pulling in a good wage, but I also think at some point that's also not going to be sustainable. But what are you guys seeing? Are you having conversations with your staff? Are they wanting to come back to work? Are they nervous? Is there a lot of anxiety there? Jay, I see you shaking your head. Or you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. Can you hear me? I'm not muted, right? Okay. Yeah, I mean, all of our staff, for the most part, wants to come back to work. Maybe we're very fortunate that way. I don't know if people by nature in our industry kind of have a devil-may-care attitude. But as an owner and someone that owns public gathering spaces, I kind of personally refuse to be part of a problem, which it makes it a very fine line for me to walk of when to bring people back and when to bring them back and how to bring them back safely. As soon as I can do it safely, I'll bring back as many people to the workforce as possible. As far as I was a server or a bartender in her position, I forget the young lady's name who asked the question, Lynn. I think you have to, this is kind of an ambiguous answer, but you kind of need to put a lot of faith in the owners and operators to get back to work as forcefully and as quickly as possible. We don't have an answer, unfortunately, of how and when that's going to happen, but I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I know that I'm trying to do it as quickly as possible. And, all of our bartenders and cooks and bar backs and bussers are all kind of chomping at the bit. They're sick of sitting around home.
Yeah, like another thing we're developing on our platforms for moving forward, especially for people, our staff that are worried for offering, we're going to start doing tasting packages. I've seen a lot of other people doing that already, but then, your liquor specialist in the bar will then host a Zoom chat with all the people that bought the packages. Other ones we're looking at is the catering side of things. So each bar on the platform will have bartenders for hire. So like hire a Panda Sons bartender, hire a Sweet Liberty bartender to do private parties and all this stuff as well. So we're looking at, obviously dark kitchen, once we're allowed to reopen and the social things get relaxed, doing more catering, bartenders, servers, and start treating the business of doing more of that. Because I guess before I just didn't have time to do that. But I think now we're going to have to start looking at catering, using our branding, obviously, of our bars. But, I think that's going to be something. And for people that are too scared to definitely return to work, or you might not necessarily have full-time work for them, doing stuff like tastings or private cocktail masterclasses, where you send the packages out to the people that buy them, and then your staff run them, is another way we're thinking about diversifying the platform in our bars. That's
great. All right, so I'm gonna just wrap us up here just because we've gone a little bit over time, and I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. I know that the people on this call are very, very generous with their intellectual property, and I'm sure if you wanted to reach out that they would be happy to answer any more questions that you have. I certainly would. Feel free to reach out to me. The one thing that I would just like to say when wrapping this up is that I very firmly believe that when you own a business, that the people that work for you are in your care. And now more than ever, they're looking to you to lead them through this. And it's so important to reiterate what Jay said. And I know it's how everyone on this call feels. It's so important to make sure that we are providing an environment for our teams that are safe, not just for their physical well-being, but also for their mental well-being. It's never been more important than now. It's always been important. And that's really what I would just say. And once again, for the resilience of everybody on this call and for the resilience of everybody that's called in and all of our brothers and sisters around the world that are dealing with this crisis. I just want to say, stay strong, be good to yourself, and thank you very much for logging on. Thank you very much to Tales of the Cocktail. We really appreciate the opportunity to reach out to our peers. Thank you, guys.
Thank
Bye.
Thank you, Laura.